Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
Joss meets Vaughn at the Brown Dog, and he tells her that Dalton's been then drinking his heart out, and he wants her to see if he'll open up to her. Joss joins the veritably drunk Dalton at the bar and flirts with him, noting she's no longer his adjunct or pupil. Dalton slurs as he recounts his bad day, with Rocco breaking into his lab looking for beast testing, and his grandmother, the mayor, doesn't suppose he should have to pay for that. After what happened at his old university, Dalton admits he no longer runs tests on lot and reveals he does his real work at another lab that PCU knows nothing about. As he spills all this, he gets a bit handsy, squeezing Joss' ham, which the espionage Vaughn cringes at. Joss continues to play on his pride, asking about the other lab. He lets it drop that it's not far, the rent around then is cheap, and it's isolated enough that the neighbors can't hear the tykes barking. Is Joss about to be exposed? At the sanitarium, Gio and Emma checked on Ned, who's out of the forest land. Still, Gio can't stop allowing about Dante's words to him. Emma tells him that Dante saying he doesn't watch about Rocco proves he knows nothing about Gio. Gio and Emma head to the Brown Dog, where they spot Joss at the bar, flirting with Dalton. When Joss sees them, she suggests to Dalton that they get out of then. He tells her they can go try out the comfy settee in his lab. Before they can leave, Gio weighs in and asks if Joss wants to have a drink with them, as they've news for her. Joss tells Dalton she'll be quick and way away. Gio and Emma tell Joss what happened to Rocco thanks to Dalton. Dalton approaches them and asks Joss if she wants to get out of there. Emma switches out at Dalton for being a disgusting mortal and reveals she's the Bone, who broke into his lab at his old university, and she organized this break heft, too. Dalton threatens to have her locked up with Rocco, so she tosses a drink in his face. Vaughn weighs in just as Dalton lunges at Emma, flashes his WSB credentials to everyone, and hauls the professor off to speak alone. Vaughn orders Dalton to come into the station hereafter to unbend this out, and he agrees to be there. Dalton drunkenly staggers off, and Vaughn follows him out. Emma is confused and prodigies if the WSB has been probing Dalton this whole time. Gio asks Joss if she knew Vaughn was WSB, and she claims he prevaricated to her, too. Emma thinks that with the WSB involved none of what they did was necessary, and Rocco's locked up for nothing. Joss says Emma is wrong. One of Britt's secrets is revealed. At Windmere, Britt wouldn't let Dalton put Rocco in peril, and Sidwell assures her that he's not her adversary and reminds her that he and his mate are the Bones, furnishing her with the drug that's allowing her to live a full life. Britt harangues that she wasn't given a choice to be a part of this operation, as 1 nanosecond she was dying in her mama's arms, the coming she's waking up at the 5 Poppies. Sidwell says she had formerly decided to leave Port Charles, and all they asked in return for saving her was that she continue her father's work. They argue back and forth. Sidwell is ridiculous in this occasion with his facial expressions, uproarious commentary, and erraticisms. Britt stands her ground and won't let Dalton ruin Rocco's life. Suddenly, a drunk Dalton shows up, screaming he has the WSB after him, so Sidwell had better do something. Will Charlotte and Danny be suitable to save Rocco? At the PCPD, Alexis asks Nathan what he thinks of the kiddies' concession, and Nathan says they sound honest and will make good substantiations. Alexis relays this to Jason, who's on board with Danny coming forward, knowing Sam would want him to in the interrogation room. Charlotte tells Danny she has a plan not only to free Rocco but to destroy Dalton. She suggests they lie and say that Dalton hit Rocco. Danny notes they'd have to move, so Charlotte sells him the taradiddle, pouting how spooked she was, and she said, unfit to help her family. Danny laughs that her parents have no idea how important trouble she really is. The bad seed makes a return appearance. In Dante's office, Sunny joins Lulu, Dante, and Rick to bandy the kiddies coming forward. Dante and Lulu duet like the threat to Danny and Charlotte, but Sunny feels the kiddies may be Rocco's only shot. Alexis arrives, tells the gang that Jason's on board with the plan, so Lulu decides to talk to her son. Lulu speaks with Charlotte alone in the interrogation room. Charlotte tells her mama she wants to do this, she can do this, and to trust her. Back in Dante's office, Sunny worries Turner will say Danny and Charlotte are lying for their family. Dante says forensics is working to prove Dalton destroyed his lab, and Rick believes he can get Dalton to lose it on the stage. Alexis assures Dante that Rocco has two great attorneys, while Rick thanks Sonny for the support. What does Drew want from Laura? Jordan stops by Laura's office, and they bandy the returns, with Ezra leading beforehand. Laura feels she owes Jordan a reason, as she let her quit her job to get dirt on Sidwell. However, Jordan will be left out there on her own without her support, if she loses the election. Jordan reminds her that it was her idea and choice. They're intruded by Drew, who dropped by to see if Laura's working on her concession speech to Ezra. After Drew and Jordan throw cuts at one another, Drew states he has sanctioned business with Laura, so Jordan can go. Man, someone should shoot him again. Alone, Laura tells Drew she's come to terms with the fact that she's going to lose, meaning it'll be Drew's job to cover the people of Port Charles. She tries to appeal to the man he used to be. She also asks why he's really then. He wants her to plump Ezra in her concession speech. She seethes as they both know Ezra is in Sidwell's fund, leading Drew to flash back Sidwell hanging to destroy him if he doesn't do what he wants. Drew and Laura go back and forth about Sidwell being just a businessman and Laura's ties to alleged mob master, Sonny. She accuses him of not working for the megacity, as he was tagged to do, but to discipline Michael, Sonny, and Jason. Drew argues that everyone uses their positions for particular gain, and she's no better than he is, putting her family member and Sonny's son in as the acting commissioner, in the show's final moments. Laura tells Drew they aren't the same. Jordan bursts in as they're about to call the race, and Laura is stupefied when she wins 4 further times. Drew, of course, smothers. At the bar, Joss tells Emma her instincts were right, and Dalton drunkenly revealed that he's testing on creatures at another lab. Joss has to go, and Emma thanks her for chancing that out and telling her. Vaughn waits for Joss outdoors and tells her she did a good job with Dalton, though he abominated her fashion. He pulls her into a kiss. At the PCPD, Charlotte and Danny are both on board to swear on Rocco's behalf. Nathan asks them, before they leave, how they got the crucial fob. Danny reveals they lifted it off Britt. Lulu, Nathan, and Jason all have a look of concern at this news. Away, Rick tells Sonny not to resort to the usual tactics and make Dalton disappear. Finally, at Windmere, Britt tells Dalton he prevaricated to the PCPD, he trashed the lab to frame a sprat, and has put their operation at threat. She can do his job in his sleep, so they don't need him. Sidwell agrees, pulls out a gun, and fires it, hitting Dalton in the casket. Dalton goes down, and Britt gasps. In the heart of Port Charles, where the lines between justice and vengeance, truth and deception, are perpetually blurred, a city held its breath. For its citizens, life was a series of baptisms, some by water, offering renewal, but most by fire, testing the very metal of their souls. On this day, the flames of consequence roared, fueled by encouraging words whispered in desperation and angry threats delivered with cold finality. It was a day of revelations and revolutions, where a kiss could seal a pact, a lie could become a shield, and a single gunshot could echo through the gilded halls of power and the stark cells of despair. The honeyed trap, seduction and secrets at the Brown Dog. The Brown Dog bar was steeped in the familiar aromas of stale beer and polished wood, but tonight, the air crackled with a different energy. Jocelyn Jacks, her heart a drumbeat of nervous anticipation, met the intense gaze of S. Vaughn in a shadowy booth. He was a silhouette of coiled potential, a man whose very presence suggested hidden agendas and government-sanctioned danger. He's been here for hours, drowning his self-pity in bottom-shelf whiskey, Vaughn murmured, his eyes flicking toward the bar where Professor Henry Dalton sat, a slumped and disheveled figure. His defenses are down. See if you can get him to open up. Use that charm of yours. Jocelyn felt a prickle of distaste, but the journalist in her, the part that craved the story and the sister-in-arms who wanted justice for Rocco, overruled her discomfort. With a deep breath, she transformed, her posture softening, a coquettish smile playing on her lips as she slid onto the stool next to Dalton. Professor Dalton? I almost didn't recognize you without your lab coat, she began, her voice a warm, inviting melody. It's Jocelyn Jacks. Though, I suppose I'm not your assistant anymore. Or your student. Just an admirer of brilliant, misunderstood minds. Dalton turned bleary, bloodshot eyes toward her. The flattery was a key turning in a rusted lock. Misunderstood, he slurred, the word thick with resentment. That's the word for it. Had a very bad day. That falconary boy breaks into my lab, my sanctum, looking for things that are none of his business. And his grandmother, the mayor, he spat the title like a curse. She thinks he shouldn't have to pay for it. A slap on the wrist for vandalizing years of work. Jocelyn leaned in, her expression one of scandalized sympathy. That's outrageous. They don't understand the pressures of true innovation. Emboldened by the whiskey and her attentive ear, Dalton's tongue loosened further. He spoke of being hounded out of his previous university by sentimentalists who couldn't grasp the necessities of science. Learned my lesson, he confided, his breath a boozy cloud. I don't run my real tests on campus anymore. PCU knows nothing. I have another lab. My own place. As he spoke, his hand landed heavily on her thigh, a possessive, sloppy gesture that made Jocelyn's skin crawl. From his booth, Vaughn's jaw tightened, his knuckles whitening around his glass. He despised the method, even as he admired the results. Jocelyn, however, didn't flinch. She placed her hand over his, a gesture of false comfort. Your own lab? How ingenious. You must have complete freedom there. Oh, yes, he preened, squeezing her leg. Rent's cheap around here. Place is secluded. No nosy neighbors to complain about, the dogs barking. The admission was casual, damning. He had just handed her the very proof Emma had been searching for. The intervention and the ice bath. The bar door swung open, slicing through the clandestine atmosphere. Gio and Emma entered, their presence an immediate shock to the system. Emma's eyes, wide with a mixture of confusion and betrayal, locked onto Jocelyn, who was practically wrapped around the professor. Seeing them, Jocelyn knew her time was short. This place is getting crowded, she purred to Dalton. Why don't we get out of here? A lecherous grin spread across his face. I've got a very comfortable couch in my lab. We could try it out. Before they could move, Gio was at their side, his tone strained but polite. Jocelyn, can we have a word? We have some news. Reluctantly, Jocelyn excused herself, promising Dalton she'd be quick. At their booth, the news was grim. Dalton framed Rocco, Gio said urgently. He's being charged with felonies. He's in jail, Joss. Before she could process this, Dalton stumbled over, his patience evaporated. Are we leaving or not? Emma could no longer contain her fury. She rose to her feet, a righteous avenger. You disgusting, pathetic man, she seethed, her voice trembling with rage. You framed a teenager to cover your own filthy secrets. I know all about your illegal testing. I'm the one who broke into your lab at your last university. I organized the break-in here. You're not a scientist, you're a fraud and a coward. Dalton's face purpled with drunken indignation. You little bitch. I'll have you locked up right next to him. In a move that was both cathartic and reckless, Emma snatched her glass from the table and threw its contents directly into his face. The ice and liquid dripped from his nose and chin, a stunning, public humiliation. With a roar, Dalton lunged for her. But his attack was halted by an immovable object. Vaughn stood between them, his posture radiating authority. He flashed a wallet containing his WSB credentials, the badge gleaming under the bar lights. That's enough, Professor, he stated, his voice low and commanding. He held a sputtering, dripping Dalton away for a private, intense conversation, ordering him to report to the WSB field office the next day to straighten this out. After Dalton staggered out and Vaughn followed, Emma turned to Jocelyn, bewildered. The WSB? Have they been investigating him this whole time? Gio looked at Jocelyn. Did you know? He lied to me, too, Jocelyn lied smoothly, maintaining her cover. He told me he was a PCU administrator. Emma's shoulders slumped in despair. If the WSB was on it, then none of this was necessary. Rocco's in jail for nothing. You're wrong, Jocelyn said, her voice dropping. She leaned in. Your instincts were right. He told me everything. He has another lab. He admitted he tests on animals there. The truth, delivered in a hushed tone, was a vindication that momentarily bridged the gap between them. Emma offered a grateful, stunned nod as Jocelyn made her exit. Outside, in the cool, quiet night, Vaughn was waiting. You did a good job in there, he acknowledged, his eyes appraising her. You got the intel. But your technique, he shook his head, a flicker of something possessive in his gaze. I hated watching him put his hands on you. Before Jocelyn could retort, he closed the distance. The professional tension between them, charged with danger and a shared, secret purpose, snapped. He pulled her into a deep, passionate kiss, a seal on their new alliance, a reward for the mission, and the spark of a far more personal and complicated fire. The gilded cage and the final solution, a doctor's desperation. Across the river, in the oppressive grandeur of Windmere, another kind of confrontation was reaching its boiling point. Britt Westbourne stood before Jen Sidwell, the elegant drawing room feeling more like a prison cell. I won't let Dalton ruin that boy's life, Britt stated, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands, a tremor she knew was as much from Huntington's as from fury. Sidwell, infuriatingly calm, regarded her with an almost bored amusement. I assure you, Dr. Westbourne, I am not your enemy. In fact, my partner and I are the only reason you are still standing here, capable of such noble sentiments. We provide the medicine that allows you to live a full, productive life. A life Jason Morgan could not give you. A life? Britt laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. I wasn't given a choice. 1 minute I was dying in my mother's arms, the next I was waking up at the Five Poppies, a prisoner in a luxury resort. You didn't save me, you recruited me at my most vulnerable. You had already decided to leave Port Charles, Sidwell countered with infuriating logic, a slight, mocking smile playing on his lips. We simply facilitated the transition. All we asked in return was that you continue your father's brilliant work. A small price for a second chance, wouldn't you say? Their argument was a familiar, exhausting dance. Britt stood her ground, her moral compass clashing violently with the biological leash Sidwell held. She would not be the cause of Rocco's destruction. Suddenly, the tense equilibrium was shattered. The doors burst open and a drunk, disheveled Dalton stumbled in, his eyes wide with panic. Sidwell. The WSB. They're after me. That agent, Vaughn, you have to do something. Make him back off. Britt saw her opportunity and seized it. He's a liability, she hissed, turning her fury on the trembling professor. He lied to the PCPD, he trashed his own lab to frame a child, and his drunken incompetence has put your entire operation at risk. I can do his job in my sleep. We don't need him. Sidwell's amused expression faded, replaced by a cold, clinical assessment. He looked at Dalton not as a colleague, but as a flawed piece of equipment. I agree, he said, his tone utterly devoid of emotion. He walked with a chilling casualness to an ornate cabinet, opened a drawer, and pulled out a sleek, black handgun. Dalton's drunken bravado evaporated, replaced by pure, sober terror. Sidwell, what are you? I'm an asset. You need me. Sidwell didn't respond. He simply raised the weapon, and with the calm precision of a man taking out the trash, he fired. The gunshot was deafening in the confined space. Professor Dalton crumpled to the floor, a dark stain spreading across his chest. Britt gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, the shocking finality of the act rooting her to the spot. The problem, it seemed, had been permanently solved. The children's gambit, weaving a shield of lies. While a life was extinguished at Windmere, a different kind of life and death struggle was unfolding at the PCPD. Here, the fate of children was being weighed in the balance of truth and deception. Alexis Davis, her mind a whirlwind of legal strategy and grandmotherly fear, sought out Nathan West. "What's your professional opinion?" she asked, gesturing to the interrogation room where Charlotte and Danny waited. "As a witness, not a nephew." Nathan sighed. "They sound honest. They're scared, but coherent. A jury would find them credible." It was the encouraging word she needed. She relayed this to Jason, who stood with the stoic tension of a father steeling himself for his son's sacrifice. He gave a grim nod of agreement, knowing it was what Sam would have wanted. Inside the interrogation room, however, the children were crafting their own brand of justice. Charlotte, her eyes gleaming with a cunning that was both impressive and frightening, laid out her plan to Danny. "Confessing we were there isn't enough. We need to destroy him," she stated, her voice low and intense. Danny looked wary. "What are you talking about?" "We say he hit Rocco," Charlotte proposed. "We say he got violent." "That's lying under oath, Charlotte." "So," she shot back, her expression fierce. "He's framing our friend for a felony. Sometimes you have to fight dirty. We just have to be convincing." To demonstrate, she launched into a performance, her lower lip trembling, her voice adopting a fragile, fearful quiver. "I was so scared. I just froze when Professor Dalton hurt my younger brother. I couldn't do anything to help him." Danny stared, then let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Your parents," he said, shaking his head in a mixture of awe and alarm, "have no idea how much trouble you really are." Charlotte's mask of innocence fell away, replaced by a sly, knowing smile. "That," she said archly, "is on a need-to-know basis." Upstairs, the adults were locked in their own tense debate. In Dante's office, Sunny and Rick formed a pragmatic front against Dante and Lulu's parental terror. "This is the only way to create reasonable doubt," Rick argued, the defense attorney in him seeing the pieces on a chessboard, not the lives at stake. "And if the DA decides to charge all three of them?" Dante countered, his voice raw. "We could be trading Rocco's freedom for Danny's and Charlotte's." Sunny, his own history with the system lending his words a grave weight, placed a hand on his son's shoulder. "We have to take this chance. The kids may be Rocco's only shot." When Alexis arrived with Jason's blessing, the decision fell to Lulu. She sought out Charlotte, finding her not as a child, but as a determined co-conspirator. "Are you sure about this, honey?" "Absolutely sure. I can do this, Mom," Charlotte assured her, her gaze steady and resolute. "I want to do this. Trust me." It was the final, fragile piece of the plan. With Charlotte and Danny committed, the die was cast. As they prepared to leave, Nathan, ever the thorough detective, asked the question that had been overlooked. "One last thing. How did you get the key fob to the lab?" Danny and Charlotte shared a quick, silent glance. Then, Danny took a breath. "We took it from Britt's purse." The revelation landed like a physical blow. Nathan closed his eyes, pained. Lulu and Jason exchanged a look of stunned realization. The web of guilt had just ensnared another soul, and Jason's path was now clear. He had urgent, angry questions for the woman he thought he had saved. The people's verdict, a stunning victory and a bitter defeat. At City Hall, a different verdict was being delivered. In her office, Laura Collins was steeling herself for a defeat she believed was inevitable. The memory of her public slap replayed in her mind, a moment of maternal fury she was sure had cost her the election. Jordan Ashford offered quiet solidarity. "It was my choice to resign, Laura. You have nothing to apologize for." Their moment was shattered by Drew Kane's entrance. He carried himself with the arrogance of a victor. "I trust you're working on your concession speech," he said, his tone cold. "It's important for the transition that you endorse Ezra publicly." After a heated exchange that ended with Drew dismissively telling Jordan to leave, he was alone with Laura. She made a final, desperate appeal to the ghost of the man he once was. "If I lose tonight, the well-being of this city falls to you, Drew. You'll have to be the one to protect the people Sonny's peers employ, the families that rely on that port." For a fleeting second, something like confusion crossed his features. "You think I can handle that responsibility?" I'm appealing to the man you were, Laura clarified, her voice firm with fading hope. She then asked why he was truly there. I want you to endorse Ezra in your concession speech, he stated. The request was a bridge too far. We both know Ezra is in Jen Sidwell's pocket, she seethed, the name hanging between them like a threat. Drew's face tightened, a flicker of the manipulated puppet he had become. He launched into a tirade, accusing her of being no better than him, of using her power to install her son-in-law as police commissioner. We all use our positions for personal gain, Laura. You're no saint. We are not the same, she fired back, her voice ringing with conviction. At that moment, Jordan burst back into the room, her face alight with disbelief and joy. They're about to call it. Laura, you won. You've been re-elected. The air rushed from Laura's lungs. The despair she had held at bay shattered, replaced by a wave of stunned, triumphant exhilaration. She and Jordan embraced, the words "4 more years," a triumphant cry. Across the room, Drew stood utterly still, his carefully constructed world crumbling to dust. The people of Port Charles had chosen their heart over his hollow, programmed ambition. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. The baptism was complete. The city had been cleansed by fire in some quarters and plunged into deeper shadows in others, and the battle for its soul was now more defined, and more dangerous, than ever.